Hi, welcome back to Writing Wednesday Book Talk. Today I'm going to talk about my very favorite genre of fiction, and probably the thing I read the most of, which is historical fiction. And among historical fiction writers, probably my very favorite is Sharon K. Penman. And among her books, my very favorite is one of her earliest books, the first one I read, which was also the first book of grown-up historical fiction that I read, and probably launched my love for the genre, and that is the Sunne and Splendour, which is a novel about the Wars of the Roses and most specifically about Richard III. If you're into the controversies around that era, it is a very, very pro-Richard III novel. He's the good guy, and I guess the fact that this was the first book I'd read set in that era biased me for life in favor of Richard, so I'm a bit of a Ricardian thanks to Sharon K. Penman. But of course the question for this series is, what did I learn from it as a writer? As a writer of historical fiction, you have a really difficult balance because you have to do a massive amount of research. And whenever you slip up on the research or don't do enough or don't get the historical details right, people will pounce on that, of course, because you got this wrong or you left out this important detail. And I do it myself as a reader. If I recognize that a writer has gotten something wrong in an era or a place that I know something about, it's jarring to me. But you also then have to weave your research into the time period, into the story, in such a way that it's natural, that it doesn't seem heavy-handed or you're flaunting or showing off, here's all the things I learned when I went to the library. Now, some writers do this a lot better than others. I'll name no names, but I read a series by a quite well-known author set in ancient Rome, where it used to constantly pull me out of the story that the characters, all ancient Romans, were stopping constantly to explain aspects of Roman culture to each other in dialogue. And I'm thinking, wouldn't you know what this means? The other guy wouldn't need to tell you because Gaius and Lucius, you're both from here. I think you're really explaining it to me, the reader, and it's coming across as heavy-handed and awkward. I want to give just one short passage in a 900-page book to show how I think Sharon K. Penman does this really well. And it's a really emotionally intense scene for young Anne Neville, who is ultimately going to become the wife of Richard III, but as a younger girl was married off in a very political alliance to her father's former enemy, now ally, because people were constantly changing sides throughout this war, Edward of Lancaster. And this is told from the perspective of Anne's sister Isabel. There are shifting points of view in this novel, and we get into a lot of different characters' heads. And Isabel is observing Anne reacting to the news of her planned marriage. Anne's chamber was cold. Neither the Flemish wall arras nor a heated brazier could withstand the chill. Yet Anne was clad only in a kirtle of cream-colored silk, sitting before the pier glass, surrounded by an impressive array of perfumes, rose water, and cosmetics. Kohl and belladonna for the eyes, ceruse to whiten the skin, red ochre lip rouge, marigold balm. Her sister was not alone. Another girl was leaning over her. She looked up quickly as Isabel entered, and Isabel reckoned Veronique de Crécy, one of the young French women who had been chosen to attend Anne. This particular girl was only a few years older than Anne, and they seemed to have developed a degree of intimacy during these 4 months at Amboise. "Anne, why aren't you dressing? You've less than 3 hours." Anne continued to stare into the pier glass. "Go away, Isabel," she said dully. Isabel waved the French girl aside, stepped closer to her sister. "I was told you dismissed your ladies. Is that true? Anne, look at me. What nonsense is this?" Seeing she had Anne's unwilling attention, she continued coldly, "Surely you are not going to give us yet another tearful display of self-pity." "I cannot do this, Isabel," Anne whispered. "I cannot." "You will, though, and we both do know it. We've been over this till there cannot possibly be anything left unsaid. Our father's future depends upon this marriage. He has given his word to the French king. He must have French support, and this marriage is the price he must pay for that support. You know that, Anne." "The price he must pay?" Anne sounded incredulous. "As I see it, I am the one who must pay. I am the one who must wed with Lancaster. Wed a man I do despise." What I love in that scene, so many things. I love the display on Anne's dressing table of all the cosmetics, just as a similar scene for a modern-day girl might have her lipstick and her eyeshadow and her foundation. All of these are named and mentioned in passing, not with a huge amount of attention drawn to them, just to show us what the dressing table of a teenage girl in the 1400s would have looked like, what items would have been on it. That's the kind of detail that makes a historical scene really ring true. And I love the fact that we get both Anne's reluctance over the marriage And at the same time, her and her sister's knowledge that, of course, this is what they're expected to do as the daughters of a high-ranking nobleman. Their marriages are going to be political, whether they like it or not. So I think that's one scene out of 900 pages that illustrates many, though by no means all, of the things that I love about great historical fiction. How it can bring another time and place to life and bring those people to life and make us aware simultaneously both of how different from us they are and yet how much alike. That's why I love historical fiction. That's what I strive to do in my own writing, and Sharon K. Penman is one of my great inspirations in that. Even though we write about different eras and different worlds, I've tried to learn a lot from her.